fact. It's an enormous privilege for me to be here, have the opportunity to speak to you, but also to share the podium with these tremendous leaders who have demonstrated over and over a really true great maxim that there is real depth in leadership in disaster and emergency management here in Alberta. My role in terms of the Alberta Emergency Management Agency is to lead our team positioned within government to provide leadership and strategic advice across the public safety system, and that system is composed of municipalities and their fire and emergency management organizations, industry, non-government organizations, government of Alberta departments, federal partners, and on and on. A whole range of elements that make up the public safety system. The other role that we have, though, is coordinating that highly integrated system when there is a threat to a community's, and no more was this nowhere better seen as a major challenge than to the response mounted for Slave Lake. In terms of scene setting, I just want to spend a few seconds in just saying this, that particular weekend we were in a sense recovering, that's environment and SRD and the Energy Resource Conservation Board, from the response to one of the largest oil spills in the region. And as I finished up my week, or so I thought, on Friday, it was really sort of thinking about the fires that were threatening the Little Buffalo oil spill site up to the east of Peace River. My perspective changed when briefings started to come in that really we're now talking about communities that were being threatened. Quite a number of First Nation communities around the area of Slave Lake. On Saturday, we raised our level of operations within the Provincial Operations Centre. And I should mention that that's the body that is operated within government, enables government to come together and mount a coordinated response in support of the community when needed. So at level 2, that was me and my planning staff coming together, connecting with our field officers who are now already deploying out to the area of Slave Lake, because we're appreciating that it was hot, it was dry, there were fires that SRD had characterized as out of control. It was an area of concern. But as you've seen from the slideshow, that morning on Saturday the 14th, just it broke bright and crisp and clear up in Slave Lake at least. And then things changed, and they began to change rapidly, particularly on Sunday afternoon. Our minister at the time, Hector Goodrow, had passed through the community around about noon. He was not particularly concerned. The incident commander thought that the fire break would hold. And then, I guess, the perfect storm brewed. That combination of hot and dry winds that were driven along at 100 kilometers an hour. The fact that water was becoming scarce in the town, the fact that aircraft were now being grounded because it was impossible to fly them, and as a result, that option of dropping water on and in around the town was now gone. And we were in constant touch with the town and with the MD. We had our 2 field officers were now in the town. They were our eyes and ears and our important communication with the town. And they were, well, what they were sending back to us was information that this is serious. This is very serious. The town is now beginning a fight for its life, but they've got really professional, really focused people. They've got a community that, whilst they can't evacuate at that particular time, around about 6 o'clock that evening, that they are calm, that they are receiving information that's being given to them by their elected officials and their emergency management personnel. But things started to escalate quite quickly. The communities were cut off, we couldn't get resources in, and the people couldn't get out. I was sitting with the managing director at that time, Dana Woodworth, a very experienced and charismatic leader. And as things started to build up in terms of seriousness, and we both have a lot of experience of dealing with emergency situations, it was a message that came in from the town that we have lost all power and we cannot now pump water, that he actually looked in my eyes and said, stop the injects. And that's code for when you're training and when you're building up you're building up your experience, you go through exercises, and people also always like to lob things in to raise the tension and raise the stakes and raise the pressure on you, and that's called an inject. And this was becoming so serious in our experience that for a second we thought this is almost surreal. We can't get the people out, the town is fighting with everything that they've got, there is 4-foot chop on the lake, and we can neither get resources in or out. And then a break came, and the town and the MD gave the order under that state of local emergency to evacuate. We were ready for that. We had planned for it. We had moved resources forward, fuel and buses, so that we could effect that. And as the Reeve has said, there was a tremendous evacuation. Nobody was injured, nobody was lost. In fact, often missed by the media. It was one of the most incredible disaster responses, and apart from the tragic incident with the helicopter pilot, nobody was actually killed or injured. So on the kind of the disgorge, if you will, of people out into northern Alberta, the next responsibility for us was to coordinate the firefighting resources that would now be needed to come into the town and manage that fire. And then we really strongly felt that it was going to be our responsibility as the town continued that fight for the town, for its buildings and its industry and its future, that we must look after the people. Now, of course, that was a hugely shared responsibility. Incredible work was done by many of the towns and villages and hamlets to put up people and to take care of them, provide for their basic needs. And for a period of a week or more, as we then worked with disaster social services agencies who just took on incredible responsibility to move people out of sports halls and into more comfortable accommodation, and to keep in communication with them, because obviously they were incredibly anxious about what was happening to their town and to their possessions and to their community. And so our job, the focus shifted from one of response, and in that response, new learnings occur all the time, but having the Calgary Emergency Management Agency, and you saw Tom Sampson, he featured very, very strongly. But there were other communities that came forward, many of them too numerous to mention, but Strathcona County came straight out of the blocks and provided an incident management team, a Spruce Grove in St. Albert, the City of Calgary and Edmonton I've mentioned, and a lot of other individual acts of leadership that just changed the dynamic in the town, so that exhausted both the elected officials and emergency managers could get some form of respite. So when Reeve Garrett talked about, you don't really know what strength that you've got until you need it, quite frankly, neither did I. And we as the government, we also needed help. And where did we turn? We turned to larger communities. We turned to other government departments. We turned to the federal government, and everybody came up to the plate immediately. I know Tim is going to talk a lot about leadership. In the Provincial Operations Centre that night, we had 7 cabinet ministers, and we connected to the Premier. The Premier provided tremendous leadership, Ed Stelmach, that night, and he set the course for success. And he emphasized that the municipality is in charge, and no matter what we bring from government, and it will be considerable, it will be in very strong support for what is now really the Tri-Council. he set those conditions right from the beginning, because a successful transition from response into recovery could not have really succeeded without empowering and ensuring and enabling that local leadership. And my goodness, has it ever paid dividends. And it certainly set the platform into a successful recovery. And I think I should now hand over to my colleague, Tim Grant.